Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss any update from Tech Primers. Welcome to Tech Primers. In this video, we are going to create the Spring Data Redis application in a Spring Boot application. Right? So as usual, we are in the start.spring.io. In the previous video, we saw a basic introduction about what is Redis and where Redis can be used. In this particular video, we are going to see how we can write a Spring Boot application with which we can access a Redis server. So I'm going to quickly create a Spring Boot application here. So I'm going to say Tech Primers cache and let's name it Redis example. I'll just say Spring Redis example. Right, so the dependencies which we require are the web. So since I want to expose this as a REST endpoint, and from the REST endpoint I'm going to hit some service that is going to insert the data into the database, Redis database, and it is going to get the data back to the user. So in order to use Redis, we need the Redis dependency. So if you see, there is a Redis dependency here. This is going to give Spring Data Redis and also the Redis. So Redis is nothing but an implementation for the Java. So the Redis client for the Java. So it has lots of libraries inside Redis, with which we can connect to the Redis server by default. And Spring has written a wrapper around Spring the Redis, and we are going to see what is that. So let's quickly generate the project. I'll unzip it. And I'll just quickly open it inside IntelliJ. So I have the project here. Let me open it. So meanwhile, let the project load. So let's go to the dependencies in the POM. So you can notice that there are only two dependencies. One is called the Spring Boot Starter Data Redis. The other one is called the Starter Web. So if I go inside the Starter Data Redis, you have Spring Data Redis as a dependency, which is coming from the Spring Boot, from the Spring Data Framework, and also the Redis, which is coming from the Redis client. So these are two different dependencies which we require in order to access the Redis server. So let's go and quickly create what do we need, right? So in order to get started, so we need to have some connection factory for the Spring Boot application to connect to the Redis server, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to create some basic configuration. So I'll just create the configurations here. So we need to have a bean which is going to have the type Redis connection factory. So this is going to have the connection factory inbuilt. So this is coming from the Redis jar, right? So that is why we imported that particular jar. So this is going to have the Redis dependency. So we are just going to create this. This is going to create the Redis connection factory. So we are going to use the Redis connection factory and then just create it. So if you want to have a custom host name and the port number, you can go ahead and do that. So you can provide the host name and host name here, right? Okay, so in the Redis connection factory, you can provide the host name and the port number if they are running in a different host and the port number. So that is why we create the Redis factory here, right? The next thing is we need to create a Redis template. So like how we have a REST template for REST calls, we have a like JMS template for JMS calls. So we have a REST a Redis template. So which is coming from the Spring. You notice that it is from the Spring framework. So we are going to create a Redis template for type string and user. So user is a model which we are going to create. So which I will create it in a moment. So I'm going to create a Redis template, right? So I'm going to say Redis template of string comma user equal to new Redis template, right? And I'm going to set the connection factory to that particular Redis factory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just setting the Redis what is that Redis function, right? So I'm going to set the connection factory onto the Redis template, which is created by Spring. So this Redis connection factory is created by us with a default implementation. If you want to have any hostname or port number added, you can add that here. And this particular connection factory, we are plug it into the Redis template which Spring uses. And we are having a model called user. So let's go and create this particular class. I'm going to create it under the model package. And I'm going to implement the serializable interface so that the object is serialized. Now I'm going to add the variables here. So I'll just say I need a ID, and also I'll have a name and also the salary. So let's say salary is long, right? Okay, and I'm going to add some methods here. So I'm going to say getters and setters, add me some getters and setters. Also I need some constructor, right? So I'll just say constructor and I'll add everything as a argument to the constructor. So done. So our model is ready. Our configurations are done. I think I have written those configurations here. I'll just say Redis template, and this is not required here, so just remove it. That's it. So we have added our configurations which are required for the Redis to be up and running. So let's go and quickly create our resources. So before doing the resources, we need to connect to the Redis and get the data, right? So template we have created, but we need a repository, isn't it? So I'm going to create a user repository which is going to be an interface. So unlike the other Spring Boot projects, right? So Spring has not created any JPA type of implementation for Redis. So we have to rely on our own implementation for Redis. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a user repository like how we traditionally do, right? And I'm going to have some methods like save. So I'll just say save user, and you can save this user. So I'm going to say a method called save user, and I'll just say there is a method called right list of users, which is going to say find all, right? And let's say there are methods for what do you have here, update, right? So we need to do an update, isn't it? So I'll just say update, you're doing a user, and finally delete, right? I think you can do a ID, right? You can do by ID. Okay, so for the update we need the user, for this we need a user, and let's say we want to find by a particular user, right? So I'm going to add one more method, find by ID, so that we can find by a particular ID. Right? So now we need to create an implementation for this particular interface. So I'm going to create an interface implementation with this, and I need to annotate it with a repository because Spring needs to know that this is going to be a repository. So we are going to use the typical repository implementation so that Spring knows that okay, this is the repository, right? And what we need is a template here. So if you notice here, we created the Redis template, right, previously in the configuration. So I'm going to add that Redis template here so that we can use the Redis template for our interaction with the Redis server. So I'll just created it, and I'm going to add the constructor here. So there is one more object which we need, because from the Redis server you can get some data, and then you cannot use the Redis server directly. So there is something called hash operations. Okay, so you have to use hash operations to operate on the REST template. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the hash operations, and then I'm going to assign the Redis template dot ops for hash. So we are going to use the hash operations to access the Redis template. So in the save, we are going to say hash operations dot put, right? So put is like putting the value into the Redis cache. So we are going to use some index So basically that is the key, right? So we have to use a common key. So for user, since it is a user, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a common key. So I'm going to say the user is the key, right? I'm going to have user as the key. So let's make it caps so that we know. And I need an ID, right? So I need a key and a value. So I need to get a ID here. So the key is the user, but I need to get an ID, right? So I'm going to say ID and I'm going to pass the user. So what is going to happen is inside the user, I'm going to have a value which is going to be an ID which will be having types of users. Okay, so this is what is going to happen here. So the hash operations dot put is going to do a save literally. So we have implemented the save operation and we have written the implementation for it using the hash operations. So for find all, what we are going to do is for find all there is an operation called entries, where you can find all types of uh, objects or the value. So we can just say hash operations dot entries, and then you can provide what is the key for it. User is the key for it, and then we will get all the list of users, right? So and the only thing is it's not going to be a list of users because it's going to return a key value pair. So it's going to be a map. So previously we used to have list of objects, but here it's going to be a map of your string and map of string and user, right? Because that is what we had inserted. So where is it? I think I need to change it in the interface. Let's go and change in the interface. So it's going to return a map of string comma user. Okay, if you notice here, yeah, we are good now. So entries is going to return a map of string comma user. So for the update we just need to do the same thing. So you just do a put. So nothing is going to change here because it's just going to override whatever we are going to have, right? In fact, we can even call the save here, right, to save the operation. So in the delete operation we are going to do a delete. So we have to do hash operations dot delete, and we are going to provide the key which is going to be the users, right, and the ID. So we are going to do that. That's it. So we have implemented the update, delete, find all, but we have not implemented the find by ID. So here we have to do a get, right? So we need to get the operations. So we are going to do a get, and we need to provide the key here, so which is the user, and also the ID, so with which we are going to get, and we need to convert this into user. That's it, right? So our implementation is ready. So our user repository implementation is ready. Now we need to write a resource so that we can use the resource to get the data. So we are going to create user resource. So this is going to be a typical Spring MVC style. So I'm just going to create a REST controller, a request mapping, and I'm going to say REST slash user, right? And I'm going to create all the implementation, the repository implementation, right? So I'm going to say user repository. I'm going to create this as a constructor. Now let's create some REST endpoints with which we can add some data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some get REST endpoint, so that I'll just say add, and I'll just say what is the ID. So for simplicity I'm not going to use the post as such here, so or else I need to use a model, and also I'm going to use a ID, and then I'm going to say some name, right? That's it. So I'm going to add some default salary just for our convenience. So I'm going to return user itself, so that we can show what user got added, right? And these are going to be path variable, ID, it's going to be a string, another path variable which is nothing but name. Now we need to use the repository to do a save, right? So before we do the save we need to create a new user. So we are going to create a user with ID, name, and by default I'm going to add the salary for everyone as 20, 1000, right? And once it is saved, now I'm going to just merge the get operation also into this. So we are going to use the find by id also into this, so that I can return that back to the user. So I'm going to use user repository dot find by id back to the user, right? So add operation is covered here, and also the select operation is covered. Next I'm going to add one more rest endpoint to do a update operation. So update is going to be the same. I'll just say update, and in fact it's going to be the same, right? So I'm just saying update, right? So we are going to provide an id with a new name. So the new name will be updated, and I'm going to update the salary here to a different value, right? So that's it. And same way we are going to do a find by, and we can add a find all here. I'll just say all. So we will not have anything here. So let's do a map. So this is going to return a map of string comma user, right? So that's what we saw. So user repository dot so we need to do a find by find all. So find by sorry, find all, right? So and we don't need to provide anything, we just say find all, and this is going to return a map. So I'm just going to say return, and done. So this is going to return all. So let's quickly go and check this, right? So I'm not sure if this is going to work. So I'm going to use the port number 8082, right? I'll just quickly start this server. So before starting this, we need to start the Redis server. So I'm in the Redis path, so I just need to start the Redis server. So I'm just going to say Redis-server. Notice here how quickly the server came up, right? So let's quickly start this. Hopefully this should work now. So the application is coming up. Hopefully it has come up. Yeah, it has come up, and luckily there is no error. That means this has connected successfully with the Redis server, right? So 8082 is the port number. So let's go and do some REST call. 8082 slash rest slash user slash all. That's what we added, right? So this should not return any value right now. So if you notice here, there is nothing. So we are going to add some user here. I'm going to add an id called 1, and I'm going to say Peter. So this should add a new entry, Peter with 20 salary. Yeah, notice here that Peter and id 1 got inserted, and then it got retrieved, right? I'm going to add one more. I'm just saying add and then say Sam. This is going to add Sam, and it is going to return Sam. Now if I do a all, this is going to do a return of both the Sam and Peter. So if you notice here, the key with which we stored was the ID. So that is why the ID is coming up in the map, because that is how we stored it. Okay. So now if I do an update, I just say update, and then I'm going to say I need to update to with the name of Ryan, right? I'm going to update Sam's name, and also the salary gets updated because I already updated the salary with the update, right? Now I'm going to do all. If you notice here, Peter and Ryan is coming now with a new value. So this is, you notice, right, how quick it is comparatively to how we wrote our Spring Boot application with JPAs and other MongoDB or other database, right? So this is very fast because it's in the Redis cache, right? So that is it. What else we wrote? We wrote a delete as well, right? So I think I didn't write a endpoint for delete. So let's write a REST endpoint for delete. I'll just write that REST endpoint, and then I'll just summarize and finish the video. So I'm just going to do a delete of the ID. I don't need to provide the user, so I'll just say delete. And here I just need to say I'll just return a true or false, or I can even return the whole list, right? I can return a map of here, right? I'll just return whatever is there. So I'll just do a ID. I don't need the name here, right? I'll just say delete and I'll just provide the ID. That's it. And while returning, I'm just going to say do an all. Actually, I can rename this as all, right? Yeah. So I'll just return the data, full data completely, which is all there. So I'll just restart this server. So since the cache is not restarted, since the Redis cache is not restarted, the data will be still available for us because we are just restarting only the Spring Boot application, not the Redis cache, right? So the data will still be available for us. So I'll just remove some formatting stuff. So also once the video is done, I'll just upload these examples in the GitHub repository as usual. You can get it from there. So all my projects are in the GitHub repository. You can get it from there. If you're not aware, you can see all the projects. There are more than 20 or 30 projects which are out there, with which I made the videos on. Okay, so the server is up now. So let's go and quickly do a all to see if the data is still there. Yeah, the data is still there. Now I'm going to do a delete here. So I'll just say delete and then I'm going to do delete of Ryan. So if you notice here, when I did delete of Ryan, Peter came. I'll just add one more. I'll just say tree and then I'll add Sam, right? So now let's do an all and we should have Peter and Sam as well. Cool. So that is how Redis cache works. If you notice here, we have added all the insert, update, delete, find all and find by ID operations using the Spring Data Redis. So it was very simple, right? So we just created our own implementation, but still it was much simpler than a traditional Redis usage. If you are not using Redis, you will have to do lots of stuff. Since we are using Redis and Spring, it has removed lots of work from our end, and we are directly using it via the hash operations, right? So this is how we create a Spring Boot application with Spring Redis cache. So we just the only thing which we did here is we created a Redis connection repository, because that is the repository, the Redis connection factory basically. So the connection factory is the one with which you connect to an external Redis server, where you can give a local host and port number. Basically you can give the host name and the port number. So in our case it's local host and the default port, so I didn't give anything here. If you have any custom Redis server, you can give that here. And then we are going to create a Redis template. Inside the Redis template, we are going to inject the connection factory. So that way Spring knows that, or the Spring Boot application knows that this particular Redis template is going to connect to this particular Redis connection factory. So that is what is the additional thing which we require. Apart from that, we created a model which we need to serialize, and then we have created a repository interface. We implemented the repository interface and added a add repository annotation, and we wrote some code here with which with the hash operations we are using the Redis template to access the Redis cache, right? And then we wrote and then we finally exposed our REST endpoints using the Spring MVC style in the user resource, and then we queried the repository, updated the repository, deleted the repository using the user repository. So that's it for this particular video. Hope you guys liked it. If you want me to do any specific topic on any specific technology, do let me know in the comment section below. If you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to it. Meet you again in the next video. Thank you very much.